Hello and welcome to my channel, I Win to Lose Gaming. Alice Timefield, the newest S-rank agent in Zenless Zone Zero, has arrived and is, well, a smidge complicated. In this ultimate guide video, you'll learn everything you need to know about Alice. Destroyer of all that is asymmetrical, Alice is a polarizing physical anomaly agent specializing in assaulting her enemies twice as often. Her also only having one leg band admittingly bothers me a bit, knowing that Alice herself hates asymmetry. But perhaps it's there for some much needed exposure therapy purposes. This video was filmed on the early access server and is not indicative of the final product. There may be some changes on release, so be sure to check the comments down below to see if there are any. As usual, we'll go over her kit, best drives and stats, WEngines, teams, Mindscapes, a showcase, and finally my opinion on insert character here.
An exquisite display of flawless...
Alice's playstyle is quite interesting, and conceptually, I would describe it as a Physical Miyabi that scales off of anomaly proficiency. Most of Alice's power comes from her hold basic attack or her Starshine Waltz. In order to use Starshine Waltz, we need to understand her unique resource called Blade Etiquette. Blade Etiquette has a maximum of 300 points, and when it is full, it changes to this nice gold color. Pressing and holding the basic attack button for longer will consume more bars of Blade Etiquette. Level 1 Starshine Waltz consumes 1 bar of Blade Etiquette, Level 2 Starshine Waltz consumes 2 bars of Blade Etiquette, and, well, these two are basically useless. For Level 3 Starshine Waltz consumes all 3 bars of Blade Etiquette, and this is where the majority of her power comes from. Not only is she invincible during this, she also triggers Polarized Assault on the last hit. Now, what the heck is Polarized Assault? Well, it's honestly a bit confusing. Polarized Assault is a separate anomaly from regular Assault. Polarized Assault can only be triggered by the last poke of Alice's level 3 Starshine Waltz, and it will trigger Polarized Assault regardless of how much anomaly is on the enemy. The damage it does is as if you triggered an assault with whatever physical anomaly is on the enemy. What makes this unique though is that since it counts as its own separate anomaly, a regular assault can interact with it and thus trigger disorder. Against this enemy, we can see that by using her level 3 Starshine Waltz, we triggered a Polarized Assault. Now the enemy actually has Polarized Assault anomaly on them, and by simply triggering a regular assault, disorder is triggered. The next example shows what happens if we trigger both regular assault and Polarized Assault with the final poke of her level 3 Starshine Waltz. Regular assault is actually first applied, and then Polarized Assault is applied instantly right after, overriding the regular assault on the enemy and triggering disorder. Now the enemy is left with Polarized Assault anomaly on them. So yeah, that's why there are 2 assaults and a disorder in this situation. Alright, and you may have noticed this physical damage over time tick on the enemy. This is just part of Alice's core ability, which does a bit of assaults damage every 0.95 seconds to the enemy if an assault is on the enemy. So yeah, her whole kit hops around filling up her Blade Etiquette to make it gold colored and then using her level 3 Starshine Waltz. So that brings us to the rest of her kit, which literally just all revolves around filling up her Blade Etiquette. Starting off with her basic attack string, whose primary use is to, well, generate Blade Etiquette. You'll generally be spamming these if you don't have much else to do. These aren't the most efficient way to generate blades, but they're functional enough. Her basic 5 also has an alternate enhanced version, which if Alice triggers a regular assault at any point prior to this, she'll perform her enhanced basic 5, which takes longer and also generates more blade. Next we have her EX specials, and she has 2 versions of her EX special, both of which cost 40 energy. If Alice is moving in any direction besides backwards, Alice will perform Aurora Thrust Northern Cross, which is faster. Holding back or by not pressing any direction key at all, Alice will perform Aurora Thrust Southern Cross, which is slower and naturally does a tiny bit more of everything, although I personally prefer the faster one most of the time. Usefully, both EX specials can be followed up with her basic 5, which is nice. Alice's EX specials can also dodge an enemy's attack, which will generate 10 blades for Alice. While this is helpful, I don't find it to be a top priority, but you can get some free blades here and there through this method. Next we have her dodge, counter, and quick assist, which are largely unremarkable, but they do both hop straight to her basic 5. But what is surprisingly remarkable is Alice's assist follow-up, which generates a hefty 80 to 9-ish Blade Etiquette. It also follows up with basic 5 for good measure. Finally, Alice's chain attack generates a solid 40-ish blades and follows up with basic attack 5, and her ultimate generates a whopping 200 blade. Then we have 2 additional ways that Alice can generate blades, through her activating assault against the enemy through anomaly buildup, and via her additional ability she'll generate 30 blades via disorder. There are a few additional notes about her kit. First, in her core, she increases all assault disorder damage on the team. Yes, of course this includes if other characters trigger disorder for Alice's polarized assault or regular assault. The damage gain here is also quite substantial, typically increasing assault disorder damage by 25 to 34%. Second, Alice gains 25% anomaly buildup for 30 seconds if she triggers an assault. And third, for each point of anomaly mastery over 140, Alice gains 1.6 anomaly proficiency, so she'll want to stack as much anomaly mastery as possible. Alright, and make sure to fulfill her additional ability, where she just needs a support character or another anomaly agent on her party. Next, let's talk about some tips and tricks, starting with swap cancels. As mentioned, basic 5 and enhanced basic 5 especially are great options for swap canceling, as they tend to be the last attack in the combo string. You can also swap cancel her EX specials, although it's often worth staying on field for them to then follow them up with basic 5 or enhanced basic 5, or to trigger assault with them. Next, let's talk about swap canceling her level 3 Starshine Waltz. Generally speaking, you want to swap cancel Starshine Waltz, but there are some situations where it can be advantageous to stay on field, such as allowing Alice to trigger an assault, because if she's off field during Starshine Waltz, then she won't actually trigger regular assault with the last poke. Of course, polarity assault will still trigger. Another minor benefit to staying on field is that you can follow this up with her basic attack 5 and then swap cancel that instead. Meanwhile, swap canceling her level 3 Starshine Waltz, well, obviously provides the benefit of saving nearly 3 seconds of your life to do something else with another character. So yeah, generally speaking, swap canceling level 3 Starshine Waltz is the way to go, but know that there are reasons and situations to not swap cancel as well. And one more tip is that you want to avoid prematurely canceling Alice's level 3 Starshine Waltz. Make sure the last hit connects to ensure polarized disorder applies. Ways that you can accidentally cancel it are through quick assists, using Alice's chain attacks, or using Alice's ultimate are just a few examples. Finally, we have Alice's double disorder trick. Normally when you apply an anomaly, there is a 2-ish second cooldown before another anomaly can be applied to the enemy. However, her level 3 Starshine Waltz's polarized disorder will ignore this 2-second cooldown and apply polarized assault regardless of that cooldown, hence why you've been seeing double assaults. You can use this to your advantage by triggering a double disorder with Alice if another anomaly, like shock, is on the enemy. And ideally you should open up a stun window with this setup if possible. Now, what about combos for Alice? The reality is, Alice's combo game is extremely volatile. It hops all over the place depending on how many assaults and disorders are triggered and her teammates doing stuff and the enemy. This rabbit hole goes way too deep, but here are a couple common setups. Use her ultimate and an EX special to quickly get 300 Blade Etiquette. Well, that one was nice and easy, so how about this one? Use her level 3 Starshine Waltz, trigger assault plus disorder with that, into enhanced basic 5. Then use her EX special 1 into basic 5, EX special 1 again, and you'll get 300 Blade Etiquette for another level 3 Starshine Waltz. Yeah, as you can see, this is definitely quite the rabbit hole. I might yap a bit more about some setups during the showcases though, so stay tuned for that. Regardless, she has a very fluid playstyle, and no single combo feels perfect with her due to the chaotic nature of Anomaly in general, at least to me. For Alice's talent priority, the amount of damage she does through her crit scaling talents is unsurprisingly what you'd expect from a rabbit. You'll want to prioritize her core though above all else, and then after that you can level her basics. Then her EX special, ultimate, and assist are all fine to level for a smidge more damage and some more days output. Finally, her dash attack should be your last priority.
An exquisite display of flawless...
We've made it to the math section of this video, and don't worry, I triple checked that the numbers were symmetrical enough to not make Alice spontaneously combust. But an important disclaimer as always, especially with anomaly characters, calcs should always be taken with a larger grain of salt than usual. Anomaly is notorious for being inconsistent and difficult to calc, so you can take the following as my recommendations based on the math that I did. These calcs also consider Yuzuha as a teammate, and certain things will perform much better or much worse with and without Yuzuha. Anyway, Alice's drives and stats are fortunately fairly straightforward. For the 4-piece set, despite how the drive disc's design is slightly asymmetrical, the Fanged Metal is the clear winner. For the 2-piece set though, the Faithless Melody, Freedom Blues or Chaos Jazz, and 2-piece Puffer Electro are all great options on her, with the Faithless Melody being my preferred option and the Puffer Electro being my slightly less preferred option. For the main stats, Anomaly Proficiency is the clear winner for slot 4. For slot 5 though, both pen ratio and physical damage are great options, although keep in mind that if defense shred is involved, pen ratio does get substantially worse. As for slot 6, the clear winner is Anomaly Mastery. Thanks to both the additional Anomaly Proficiency she gains from Anomaly Mastery because of her additional ability, and the additional, well, obviously Physical Anomaly that she'll apply. As for other 4-piece set options, she can use the 4-piece Freedom Blues to apply Physical Anomaly faster, and this may be much more helpful on teams without Yuzuha, because Yuzuha does apply a ton of Physical Anomaly for Alice to assault with. But if you are using Alice with Yuzuha, then the 4-piece Freedom Blues definitely feels a bit superfluous. As for the 4-piece Hormone Punk, that one is usable as well, but I personally don't recommend it due to its inconsistency and generally lower damage on average. For substats, these calcs do favor Anomaly Proficiency rolls due to Yuzuha's massive attack buff being factored in, so yeah, Anomaly Proficiency is fantastic on Alice here. Attack percent rolls are also great, and Flat Pen and Flat Attack aren't useless either, although crit rate and crit damage are bordering on useless, so yeah. Up next we have Alice's WEngines, and breaking news, her signature Wengine, the Practice Perfection, lives up to its name and it's her best option. The Practice Perfection is pretty crazy for her since it provides 60 Anomaly Mastery, which basically translates to 96 additional Anomaly Proficiency to Alice as well. On top of that, it slaps on a bonus 40% physical damage just to really try to get you to swipe that card for her Wengine. But hold your hairs, because even though her signature Wengine calcs a lot better than her best free-to-play friendly option, the Weeping Gemini, keep in mind that if you have a teammate like Vivian, Alice's damage makes up roughly 60-ish% of her team's damage output. So the difference in total team damage is notably smaller than in this chart if you factor in the third character. However, on the flip side, if you do not have Yuzuha, then Alice's signature Wengine could arguably be even better than what's on this chart, as Yuzuha's additional Physical Anomaly application is extremely important for Alice to activate a lot of assaults, and well, the Practice Perfection provides a ton of Anomaly Mastery, which helps Alice apply a ton of Physical Anomaly, so yeah, without Yuzuha, you're really gonna feel like your assaults are happening a lot less frequently. Anyway, we have some other solid options, such as Jane's signature Wengine, the Sharpened Stinger. You do have to weave in some dash attacks here and there, and unfortunately, Alice's dash attack is remarkably bad, although her dodge counter is okay. Overall though, it's not much better than the Weeping Gemini, at least in Deadly Assault, as you inflict a ton of anomalies to the enemy and thus can have a very high average stack count on the Weeping Gemini. It also being craftable makes it my most recommended Wengine for most people, since it's both free and easy to obtain. Alternatively, if you have a bunch of refinements or upgrades on the Fusion Compiler, either through extremely bad luck or an admiration for Grace's feat, you can use the Fusion Compiler, but it's recommended to adjust your playstyle to incorporate spamming more regular specials, which honestly is pretty bad, but still, if you have some dupes of the Fusion Compiler, it can be a pretty solid option. Unfortunately, all the Wengines below the Weeping Gemini are, in my opinion, not really worth talking about, because they are all worse than the easily accessible free-to-play friendly option Weeping Gemini. But here are the calcs for those of you that don't want to craft and invest into the Weeping Gemini.
An exquisite display of flawless...
Up next, we have Alice's Mindscapes. And invest in priority. And since this part of the video has the worst retention, here is Alice when she noticed you have one sock pulled up and one sock rolled down. Needless to say, I recommend pulling for her Wenjin before her Mindscapes. However, her Mindscape 1 is quite solid, as it provides a plus 25 blade refund on her hold basic 3 and 20% defense shred. Keep in mind that with defense shred, I do recommend using a physical damage main stat in slot 5 over pen ratio. Her Mindscape 2 also provides 15% additional assault and assault disorder damage, and also throws in an extra polarized assault on her ultimate for free. Well, I guess not really for free because you got a Mindscape 2, but yeah. And another 1000 free decibels at the beginning of the fight. So yeah, her Mindscape 2 is absolutely fantastic. Her Mindscape 3 levels up her talents by 2 levels, which is an expensive joke, and her Mindscape 4 provides 10% physical resistance ignore and a bit more anomaly application on her enhanced basic 5, which, okay, whatever. Mindscape 5 is doubly an expensive joke, and Mindscape 6 gives her some weird additional anomaly proficiency scaling attacks that crit, which should be quite underwhelming for a Mindscape 6, especially since you don't typically build Alice with crit damage, but yeah. So yeah, her signature Wenjin plus Mindscape 2 is a good stopping point for those of you who are particularly passionate about bunnies. Alice's teams are pretty simple. Use her, another anomaly agent, and a support. Yes, this can be pretty much any combination of this, but let's start with my personal favorite team with Alice, Vivian, and Yuzuha. Overall, this is probably her best team, but Yuzuha definitely fits like a glove for Alice for obvious reasons, and is by far Alice's best teammate. Vivian is fantastic as well, spending most of her time off-field and providing anomaly application and disorders for tons of damage, and to even provide Alice with more Blade Etiquette. Of course, it's great to mix and match any of the premium anomaly agents with this, like Yanagi, Bernice, or I guess even Grace, as the situation calls for, like against specific elemental weaknesses. Needless to say, you can likewise swap in various supports for Yuzuha, like Lucy, Rina, Nicole, Astro Yao, or even Caesar, depending on your team, but none of them quite come up to Yuzuha's potential. Miyabi does deserve a special mention, as you can perform a ton of swap cancels between the two, and it's basically like playing two Miyabis, which feels fantastic. You can even run double support like Astro Yao plus Yuzuha to hyperbuff Alice. Finally, a really interesting combo is actually Alice, Yuzuha, and Jane. Jane is surprisingly good here, as she'll help trigger even more assaults, and those assaults can crit, leading to some pretty decent performance. Now, unfortunately, when it comes to purely free-to-play options, this is where things look a bit bleak for Alice. The best I could come up with was something like Alice, Piper, and Lucy, given the lack of 4-star anomaly agents. This team was barely serviceable, but keyword serviceable. Finally, you can try some stun shenanigans with something like Alice, Yanagi, and Trigger, and honestly, stun definitely feels much more experimental. And while my personal performance wasn't as good with a team like this, it was functional enough. So yeah, mix and match anomaly agents depending on the enemy's elements, and preferably use Yuzuha if you have her, or another support for Alice's teams.
An exquisite display of flawless...
Alrighty, we've reached the home stretch of this video, which includes some showcases, starting with the Spook Squad, or I guess a very spooky team, because Vivian, I find she fits into the spooky type of design choice as well, since she's like, what, a banshee, not a vampire. I got a lot of comments on my Vivian video telling me that she is indeed not a vampire, and I suppose a banshee. So anyway, this team in particular obviously synergizes quite well with itself, because not only do these characters fit with each other like from a design perspective, but they also fit with each other in terms of gameplay and playstyle, because Alice is a character who definitely can benefit from spending additional time on field, although she definitely has great options to swap cancel off of, like her basic 5, especially enhanced basic 5, as well as her hold basic 3, aka her level 3 Starshine Waltz. And you can just see how basically disorders are just keep getting triggered back and forth between Vivian as well as Alice. And I have to be completely honest, with all the teams that I wanted to try out, because this character definitely felt like she needs a decent amount of extensive testing. I unfortunately wasn't able to like kind of min-max rotations and all that stuff, but it basically, if I can clear this, then most like I guess like slightly less casual like players that will try a bit harder should be able to clear this stuff pretty comfortably given the levels of investment shown in this video. And the spooky team, pretty much all the S rank agents are going to be at M0 upgrade 1 on their WEngines, unless specified otherwise, which there are of course some showcases that do show off these characters without their signature WEngines. And yeah, just to give you guys some ideas in terms of like, oh, what happens when you kind of invest less into these characters, so on and so forth. So anyway, we can see that this team flows very well, and the Miasmic Fiend, I believe is what it's called. This boss is clearly designed for this specific team, which is, you're going to get a fantastic performance with this team. And needless to say, the scores are obviously extremely anecdotal, so please take them with a giant grain of salt. They are by no means an accurate comparison or, reflection of these teams' power levels, but they do reflect, what I can do with them with the amount of time that I spent on them. And also, this specific fight even has a physical damage buff, I believe, to it, so that obviously will favor Alice in her current shape and form. And we can see here that I actually decided to stay on Alice there instead of swap canceling to get the full effect of kind of the double assault on the enemy while it is stunned. And I'm going for a double hold basic 3 against the enemy while it is stunned. In this specific rotation, you can see there that I opened up the stun with the final poke on level 3 Starshine Waltz in order to, fill up the rest of her Blade Etiquette with her ultimate in order to pull off a second one within a stun window. I'm sure that some people are going to come up with some much more crazy rotations, but that was one that I could cook up in the amount of time that I had. So the next one is going to be the Dollar Tree Bunny. Now, what if, all your characters went to the Dollar Tree and stocked up on very free-to-play friendly stuff? In this case, I guess a free-to-play friendly fencing tool. Piper's got her plastic axe, and Lucy has her, I don't know, like a toy pigs or something. And this team, look, I gotta be completely honest. When it comes to full free-to-play anomaly teams, like let's say you've invested in Yishuan, maybe you got Yuzuha as well, and you don't really have like a full anomaly team, like you don't have other featured S rank agents that are anomaly, or anomaly related like Yuzuha or the other anomaly agents. So then you're gonna be stuck with something like this, and unfortunately it does not feel good. And we're also talking, of course, about free-to-play friendly WEngines. We have the Weeping Gemini on Alice here, and as we can see, this team's scores and results are going to be drastically, and I mean drastically, lower than the more signature stuff WEngine teams. And I'm tired. Every time I do these showcase recording videos, it is typically after about 12 hours of editing the rest of the guide. So yeah, it's like, past my bedtime and stuff. And yeah. So these guides take, an exorbitant amount of time to create because of the math, the testing, the script, the guide writing, and of course the video editing, which in my opinion is the most brutal part of making these guides. So I do hope you find them helpful. And yeah, it's also why like you often see occasional mistakes and stuff here and there, because yeah, these are like 30-minute long videos with like a ton of potential room for error. I think this one's going to be a little bit shorter at around 26 minutes, including the showcase and me just yapping about God knows what right now. I think I'm just talking about how tired I am and making this video. So yeah, this team in comparison to the more premium M0U1 Bunny team, this free-to-play Bunny scored 22,569 at the bottom of the barrel in terms of this list of results in comparison to the more premium team with Vivian as well as Yuzuha scoring at 49,937. You can see a very big difference, and this makes sense. Obviously, the more money you invest into these characters, right? I mean, S rank agents as well as their signature WEngines, those are some serious investments here. Basically a 1-cost team versus 6-cost team, you're going to see a big difference in the output. So anyway, this next team is Miyabi plus Alice, and unfortunately at this point I did not really have I After the first team where I was really learning the ropes and stuff with this fight, I literally did each of these runs a single time. And you can definitely tell that with my Miyabi and Alice rotations. And I was actually really surprised by this team. They actually felt really good to use together because Miyabi's really long, obviously Shimatsuki level 3 / plus Alice's level 3, waltz attack. You could just swap cancel these like crazy and allow the other the other characters on this team to do their super long attacks or to build up their resources for their super long attacks, making this team feel pretty fantastic. And although my score here wasn't the best, again, a single try with this team, I can definitely see some people absolutely tearing this apart with a bit more practice than me and significantly more time. But yeah, so in this results list, I also have the Weeping Gemini on Alice, and Vivian Yuzuha are still using the exact same stuff that they were using. So they are still at M0U1, but I wanted to highlight the difference between her signature Wenjin versus, a free-to-play option like the Weeping Gemini. We can see here roughly a 10-ish% difference in score, which definitely checks out with my earlier calcs and assumptions that were saying, Alice makes up roughly 60-ish% of the team's damage output. Obviously, test results anecdotal, take them with a giant grain of salt. Some of you guys are going to score it much better than me, even with her signature weapon, with for example, the Weeping Gemini. I'm 100% sure that's definitely going to happen. But yeah, so you can definitely see here that though, for me personally, with my level of skill and time investment into these runs, the performance difference here, and that makes sense, right? So at this point, for example, I don't even know what I'm yapping about anymore, but we can also see some other teams on here. They all scored pretty darn similarly to each other, with Jane and Yanagi also being, within this 42,000 to 49,000 range. So yeah, pretty narrow margin, all chalked up to and for example, player skill can definitely just be the main factor for the difference in the scores here. And one more really interesting point that I kind of wanted to highlight is Alice a worthy upgrade if you already have Jane? And honestly, I kind of find that a bit difficult to answer. We can kind of see here, yes, Alice did a lot better, but going from 41,000 to 49,000, is it really worth the pulls and the investment level that, you'd have to put into it? In my opinion, the answer to that is probably not. But does Alice feel better than Jane? To me, yes, she does. But does Jane still feel quite functional with, for example, more premium options like Vivian and Yuzuha? Yes, she absolutely does. But perhaps at, fully free-to-play levels, like if we drop Jane with, I don't know, Piper and Lucy, I guess Jane would use someone like Seth instead. Then we're talking about, much more copium options. And yeah, at that point, I think at purely free-to-play levels, Alice will probably be enough to push you over, for example, the comfortable 20,000 scores. Although with Jane, you might be struggling in content like this. But yeah, with their premium teams, it's a bit harder for me to say. And yeah, so we also have this M6 U5 run, which is just obviously comical because of the amount of damage that, and money that you've invested into this team. And yeah, you can just watch some big pretty numbers blow up this innocent miasmic fiend friend of ours. And yeah, let me know what you guys think about Alice down in the comments below. I think she's a pretty solid character, all things considered. Very similar, pretty much you can describe her as a physical Miyabi. Not like, earth-shattering or anything like that, or breaking any power scaling, in my opinion, in this game. Just a pretty good Physical Anomaly agent in Zenless Zone Zero. As always, I appreciate every single one of you. This is I Want to Lose, signing out.